Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Living Astrology with Janet. It's time to grab your cup of coffee or your tea. Sit back while we chat about the stars above us, the human design ahead for the week. And, this morning when I checked out what was going on, I realized it looked like a very quiet week until I realized, oh my goodness, this is the week before a lunar eclipse and it really isn't as quiet as it would seem, right? Even though there aren't like a ton of transits or ingresses that we have to talk about today, it is preparation week because March 3rd, which is just next Tuesday, or maybe Wednesday. Let's see, March 3rd as next Tuesday. We have a lunar eclipse, and the eclipses this one happens at a full moon. So lunar eclipses are a time when we are releasing, when we're bringing something into completion, where something is revealed to us about our new direction or about what it is that we need to do. And it is sometimes more difficult maybe than the new moon, which is a solar eclipse. So it'll be interesting to talk about this morning. And by far and away, what I noticed is that there's a lot of emotional energy up for grabs for this next week and on into maybe even the next few several weeks. And one of those reasons is because Mercury is turning retrograde in Pisces, and all year long, Pisces, Scorpio, Cancer are going to be the places where Mercury takes up residence during his retrograde periods. And that's a big kind of marquee moment, if you will, because it kind of shows us that we're having to relinquish the mind and get more in alignment with our emotional energy, which is something that we don't always understand in its best. So I'm going to be talking a lot about the emotional energy. And I also noticed this morning as I was preparing that all the inner planets are in gates in your human design that are on the solar plexus, which is the center for emotional energy. So emotion everywhere. This is a year where we're really looking at emotional intelligence. And remember, next year we have the solar plexus evolution or mutation, let's call it. And that is something that will impact all of us over the course of time, but particularly the young ones that are being born from next year on. They will come prepared to deal with emotional energy in a different way than what we've learned emotional energy. So it behooves all of us to understand more about our emotions and what do they tell us and what are we meant to understand about those emotions. So you're probably going to hear me talk a lot about emotional energy over the next several months to, well, probably the next several years. But let's start with Mercury retrograde. On Wednesday, Mercury will retrograde in the sign of Pisces. I'm actually going to bring up the chart here so I can show it to you. And let me make this just a titch bigger so I can see it better. And hopefully you guys can all see this pretty well. Mercury will retrograde from the 25th of February through March 20th. So about a 3-week long retrograde period. But remember, the retrograde cycles of planets always include a shadow period that happens before the retrograde. So long about February 9th or 10th, we entered into the shadow of this Mercury retrograde. And then there's the post shadow or retro shade time after the retrograde is done, where things are still a little wonky, right? The planet is still going through the degrees of the sign that it retrograded in. And so this particular Mercury retrograde will not be done until April 9th. So we have, literally about 2-month period of time where we are being impacted by Mercury and his moving through the sign of Pisces. So that means he's spending, because the whole of the retrograde period is in Pisces, we are literally dealing with Piscean energy, at least as it relates to Mercury, for 2 months, right? 2 months. And that's actually, kind of extraordinary when you think about it, right? Pisces is a sign of emotional energy that is sensitive, intuitive, loving, tolerant, accepting. Universal love is another big key word here, but it's also sometimes delusional. It sometimes is not clear, it's blurry, it's dreamy, it's escapism. And so sometimes with Piscean energy, in this case, I would say we need to get out of our minds and into our emotional sensitivity or into our intuition. Now, if we think about Mercury, let's just start here with Mercury. And here's Mercury at this moment, right here, up toward the top. You'll see I outlined Pisces in blue, and Mercury is circled there. He will he will retrograde from the 22nd degree of Pisces backwards to the 8th degree of Pisces. And then he'll forward, when he goes direct, he'll move forward back from the 8th degree back to the 22nd degree. Once he hits that degree on April 9th, it'll now be new degrees that he's in, finishing up his Pisces transit. And Mercury governs specific things in our astrology charts or in our lives. Communication, right? For one thing, our thought patterns and how it is that we move through ideas and how we think and logic and all of those types of things. Our perception. What are we perceiving? How are we perceiving? Decision making then is also a part of the Mercury experience. And decision making, made from the mind, often from the logical part of the mind, that if you were, if you've had your human design chart done, or you know anything about human design, that's nails on the chalkboard, because nobody on the planet is designed to make decisions from the mind. But Mercury, with all of its thinking capability, makes us believe that we are designed to make decisions from the mind. And then it also embraces then or impacts the stories that we tell, right? How do we relate our experiences to people, especially when they could be tall tales. It takes up the energies of lies and truth and all of that type of thing. And this year, with Mercury moving retrograde, we revise those things, right? All of those things: communication, thought patterns, perceptions, stories we tell, etc., etc. But when Mercury retrogrades in the water signs, we really revise all of those things emotionally. So we're recalibrating our emotional energy. And the recalibration isn't about logic, right? There isn't logic in emotions, right? This will become emotional intelligence. And you're going to hear this over and over again, because emotional unintelligence, let's say, is the biggest problem on the planet right now, right? As we react to things that we see or hear, or the events that are occurring, and that reaction then is often impulsive and overblown and done without any real consciousness to it. So Mercury retrograding in the water signs is really going to help us to slow down, really feel into a proper response to whatever the triggers are that we will be experiencing. And then we'll also be thinking about how it is that we feel when we speak. In other words, what are the words that we're using, and how is it landing with us, within us, but also with others? How do we react when we are misunderstood by the people outside of us? When someone takes your words and doesn't understand, like, what's the meaning here? Or the tone, like the tone beneath the words, is equally as important. How about the old emotional stories that are running your life, right? They're running your thinking, and it's usually quietly happening underneath the surface of our lives. And you guys, I think I may have to switch to my headset here, because okay, never mind. This is just the propane people. My daughter's home is about to start construction this week, so I will be in various layers of noise and machinery and so forth. So just warning you ahead of time, we might have headset times again. Okay. Anyway, so Pisces. Now, this is where Mercury's retrograde is occurring, and so with Pisces being the last sign of the zodiac, what we have is something dissolving, right? The dissolving of the mind, if you will, right? The dissolving of the thought processes. It softens, right? It softens the thinking patterns, and it remembers. Water remembers. And so Mercury retrograde in Pisces will, can feel kind of like we are having conversations that aren't quite clear or that are blurry, right? The lines are blurred in the conversation. And so, you may be having a conversation with someone that you think you're clarifying what it is that you want to say, but in reality, it's not quite that way, right? So we have to work really hard to make sure that we're understood. Now, also recognize that old feelings can resurface during this period of time. Now, particularly any places where it has been sensitive, where you've been overly sensitive, or where you've hit a sensitive note by your words to another person. And this is really interesting here because it gives us an opportunity to really reestablish what emotional reactions are versus what is emotional response. So as those old feelings resurface, they're probably resurfacing because they weren't dealt with in the first place, right? So that doesn't mean that, you're going crazy or nuts. It just means there's something else for you to see about the feelings that are coming up. Now, dreams. Pisces is very powerful in the dream state. And the dream state here are the dreams that carry messages. They're symbolic. Quite frequently, these are dreams that may seem disjointed, that may feel that like you're cracking up somehow, or they may actually be psychic messages where you get a real clear message through the dream state about something or someone. So just know that our dreams for this period of time may be also very powerful and sometimes upsetting, but look for the symbols. What are the symbols in the dream? Now, also memories return unannounced, and that can be difficult as well, depending on what that memory is. So this isn't necessarily a Mercury retrograde about technology. So remember, most of the time we're saying back up your computers, make sure before you hit send on that email that, you've got the right words and all of that. And yes, there may be something to that in this retrograde, but to really clarify this Mercury retrograde, it'll be all about the memories that are returning unannounced, right? The things that come up from the depths within us that are still bothering us or still not clear within us yet. So just watch for that. And because Mercury is moving backward through the sign of Pisces, it takes us back, right? It takes us back to those things. It's almost as if the mind is being asked to swim instead of march, right? Our mind, if we think about it, logic moving forward and moving ahead. Now we're kind of doing the backstroke, swimming backwards a bit into the deeper waters. And we may notice certain things, like maybe we have less certainty, right? If you already have an open head and ajna, you don't have access to certainty anyway. So certainty, very hard to come by. You may be more intuitive. You may have less clarity when you're trying to make a decision, especially if you are emotionally defined. You may find that you need a little more time in order to make decisions that are good for you. But we might also find that our empathy is impacted here. We may feel more deeply. We may be more sensitive in terms of how it is that we sense what's going on in the world around us and how we feel about the state of the world or the state of our communities, that type of thing. So that's the deeper layer here, right? Is when Mercury's happening, or when Mercury retrograde is happening in water, we're collectively being trained in emotional literacy, in emotional intelligence. And it becomes something that's not just about what you think. It becomes, what am I feeling? And how does that shape what I say? Right? Am I going to knee jerk and just spew from anger or hatred or frustration? Or am I going to stop myself and get in touch with what I'm really feeling, and before I say or do anything that I might regret, right? I'm gonna kind of take care of my own emotional health. And this is huge, right? This is huge because so many times when we get triggered, we don't stop and consider what it is that we're going to say or how it is that we're going to say it. We just say it, right? We just say it. So because emotional intelligence isn't about suppressing feelings, it's about understanding them before they spill over and or spill out sideways, to spew. Instead of spewing, we want to be more circumspect in addressing how it is that we feel. And, as we get later into this week, we also have Mercury coming into a conjunction with Venus. And so and that'll happen right after the retrograde. So we may also be dealing with things, revisiting things in our relationships in particular, because Venus relationship, she's also in Pisces. Conjunctions mean the planets are in the same degree of the sign. We may be revisiting our values, our old loves, our old wounds, and the way we give and receive affection. So it could be, a very sensitive time for all of us as we sort of merge through these deeper emotional energies that may be coming up. You might even find yourself asking things like, did I say that from love or did I say that from fear? Because that's the issue, right? Am I saying these things from love or fear? And am I listening to or responding? Or am I listening to respond or listening to understand? And where do I need to soften my edges? And what do I need to forgive? Pisces is a sign that is where all of the fear, all of the things that we hold on to kind of come to an ending point. So it is Pisces that dissolves the fear. It is Pisces that dissolves um, the sort of victimization energy. It is Pisces that dissolves anything that isn't of love, right? Or potentially can. And then if we're talking about Virgo energy, the opposite side, we're talking about discernment now. And so as the emotional fog hopefully begins to lift, as you get clearer about what it is that you're really feeling, then the truth becomes easier to access, right? And this isn't necessarily about chaos, although it can feel a little chaotic when you have all of these different feelings and emotional energies coming up. We're being taught how to communicate from the heart, right? How to listen from a deeper place within us and without losing discernment, right? Because if you look at this chart again, you see all this energy that we have in Pisces outlined in blue. Opposite it is where Virgo is. And because the signs operate as an axis, they're not just like one-off things that are happening, and they're happening across an axis. It means that we're asked to learn to discern what we're feeling before we spew that emotional energy out into the world. And it actually kind of feels very aligned with what it is that we're learning as a collective too, doesn't it? Right? It kind of feels like it's all apropos. Let's stop for a second. Oops, I did it the wrong way here. That is not what I meant to do. I want to remove this here and say good morning to people. First person I saw out there was Tamara this morning. Nice to have you, Tamara. And Terry, good to see you. And Terry Strauss, it's good to see you too. I think the world is spinning faster. Is that true? I think the world has been spinning faster in terms of the actual astronomy of it all. But it does feel like it's spinning faster. Every Monday morning, I'm like, well, where did the week before go? Like, where did the weekend go? It's kind of funny. Time seems sped up. Good morning, Driselda, and good morning, Amy, and good morning, J-Lo. Happy Monday to you as well. Peggy, good morning, Gayla. Hello to you. And Christine, Pisces, Sun, and Mercury natal. This makes sense. Dreams of conversations with people alive and passed over lately. And definitely, right? I've noticed too, like my daughter's very psychic, and she keeps having dreams where she's having conversations with her brother Brian, my son who passed away, and they're like things that were left unsaid. Like she told me on I think it was Saturday that she had this dream of things that she never said to him that she should have said to him. So those are things that can pop up, right? Where I should have, I could have, if I only had. And there isn't so much fear around that as there may be regret. And this is where Piscean forgiveness comes into play, right? Where I can forgive those things that I never said, or forgive the things I did say, or forgive the feelings that I haven't quite, taken care of yet. So it's a good time, I think. Barbara Doughton, good to see you this morning. She said, good morning from Long Beach, California, my old stomping grounds. I grew up in Lakewood, a suburb of Long Beach, and went to Long Beach schools. So it's good to have you with us this morning, Barbara. Okay, now let's go on to talk about the human design emotional architecture of the week, because this is also pretty extraordinary. I'm going to add the human design chart to the stage here so you all can see it. Let me make it a little bigger so I can see it. So Mercury, as we've been talking about this morning, is moving retrograde on the 25th. And it's always important to pay attention to what gate in human design a planet is moving into when it is changing direction, whether it's changing to retrograde or forward. We want to know, like, well, what gate is this? Because it will in some way influence the time period of the retrograde or of the direct. And Mercury is turning retrograde in the gate 22 on the solar plexus right here, bottom right side, kind of the middle top, going upward toward the will center or heart center. And gate 22 is called the gate of grace. And grace carries this frequency band. If we look at it through the gene keys, it's carrying this frequency band that in the shadow is dishonor. And when I always have I don't know why I have an issue with this gate, but I do, because to me it feels very moody. And I have a Cancer rising. Maybe that's why I just think of this as very moody energy, where our opportunity is to tune into the gift of graciousness that ultimately leads us to the city of grace. And in a way, this is emotional refinement. So when you think about every day, you go through the different moods of your day, right? As our moon is transiting through different gates, through different signs, different degrees of the zodiac, it triggers different emotional experiences for each one of us. Some of us feel it deeply, some of us not, but all of us, it seems, for these next few weeks are going to be dealing with this idea of moods and how it impacts the things that we say, the things that we do, and how we handle ourselves, in the greater, wider world. And I think emotional refinement is what we're after here. Recognizing that, so many times we say, I am something, right? Recognize that every time you put some word after I am, you're claiming that as who you are. So if you're saying, I am angry, you're claiming anger as your identity. And because it's an I am statement, that is your identity. I am Janet, right? I am Peggy. I am, that's your identity. But when you say I am depressed or I am frustrated, you're really putting that as an identifier of who you are. And in becoming more emotionally intelligent, what we should be recognizing is that I am feeling frustrated. I am feeling depressed. I am feeling angry. I am feeling joyful. I am feeling happy. These are feelings. These are moods, and they shift and they morph and they change with the energies of the different people that you're around, of the different planetary actions. So be very wary of claiming a feeling as an I am statement. Okay, I hope that makes sense, because I catch myself doing it all the time. I'll say, I'm so mad, but I'm not, right? I am not mad. I am feeling mad, or I am feeling upset, but I am not that. Okay. And gate 22 will remind us about being emotionally mature, about recognizing the mood, and about monitoring how it is that we respond when we're responding from a mood. Because emotional energy isn't wrong. Moods are not wrong. You are not bad when you feel angry or upset or frustrated. You are not wrong, right? These, we tend to think of feelings in either this feels good and is a good feeling, or this one feels not so good and so it's not a good feeling. Well, they're feelings. They really don't have a right or wrong to them. They're genuine. They're what you are feeling in that moment. So recognizing that your identity is not your emotions, and your identity is not the mood or the energy that you're feeling, the emotional energy that you're feeling, that the emotional energy is momentary, right? Momentary. You may still be angry over something for, a couple of hours if you want to go that long, but you're feeling that anger. You are not that anger, right? And it says, the gate 22 says, really, can you remain open-hearted even in the face of that angry energy or what you're feeling? And then, monitor what you're saying or how you are, being with other people in the midst of those feelings. Can you respond instead of react? And can you honor the timing of your feelings? Can you be okay with how you're feeling? Because the more you squelch down a feeling, you know how this is, right? The more you squelch it or the more you choke it back, the more explosive power it has when it finally does come up, right? And Mercury here, the planet of communication, begins his retrograde in this gate that's moody. So the mind is being asked to learn grace, right? Not perfection and not control over the emotional energy, but grace. Feeling it's okay to feel this feeling, right? Because in this moment, it's probably the most authentic thing that you can say about yourself. I feel sad. I feel excited, joyful, right? Whatever it is, that is your authentic self. Now, I also want to point out that Venus is in this same gate. So this blue line here from the gate 22 moving up shows that both Mercury and Venus are sitting here in this particular gate as of the beginning of this week. And this is where those two planets, mean Mercury and Venus, will have their conjunction, which doesn't really happen till Friday, but that's, it's building up. They're getting closer and closer. And Venus here isn't mental, right? She's not really in the mental realm at all. She's more in the sentimental realm. This is more relational, about your relationships, your relationship with each other, with your relationship to your finances, because she also rules the financial markets, your finances, your banking, your economy, all of that. She rules your values and how you align and live your life according to your values. She also rules your self-worth and your personal value and how it is that you speak in relationships, right? When they come into this conjunction, it'll be about how is the conversation rolling between you and others. How do you express love? You may be revisiting how you express love or how you want to be spoken to with love. Maybe you're revisiting, whether your emotional tone matches what it is that you're embodying, right? Are you, putting on a smile despite the sadness below? Because that's not authentic, right? And it doesn't mean that I'm saying, spew that anger at other people to get rid of it, because that's not it either, but to recognize and to be able to say, authentically to somebody, because when someone asks you how you're feeling, don't you usually just say, okay, or good, or I'm fine? I'm fine. That's the big one, right? I'm fine. But said with a tone that says, no, you're anything but fine. So instead saying, I'm feeling pretty blank today, or whatever it is, right? Fill in that emotion that you're feeling, because it's honest and it's authentic. And this is where you start to embody emotional intelligence, right? Being honest with yourself and being honest with others. It doesn't mean that you need to launch into the story of why it is you're feeling frustrated, angry, or upset. But instead of saying I'm fine, you might just say I'm feeling frustrated with something in my life. So, maybe we can have this conversation later, right? So that you don't spew. All right. Now let's add Mars because Mars this week is also activating. Remember, this is still February. And in February, we had all of the inner planets squaring Uranus in Taurus. So we first had Mercury square that, then we had Venus, then we had the Sun. And the last planet to square Uranus as we end February is Mars. And Mars is also in the solar plexus. He is at the gate 30, a red flag gate in human design that is about passion. It's about the emotional hunger that we have, the emotional connection to a hunger for something, a desire, a passion. And it can become very clinging energy, right? It's energy that, can be so tightly woven about us that we can't relax and hold it lightly. Remember, this is the gate that we talked about, I think it was last week, when the sun was in the sun and earth were here, about desire, right? The shadow is about desire. And the shadow energy is about the clingingness of that desire. It's about the hole, the hunger hole, right? That you're trying to fill with God knows what, right? Emotional energy, with relationships, with buying things, the emotional holes. The gift level here was lightness, right? Holding that desire, that passion with lightness. And in the city, it turns into rapture. And what we're doing here is emotional intensity, but bringing it towards something, right? We're utilizing that energy to attract something to us. But we're also kind of needing to detach from it a bit. Remember lightness, holding it lightly, so that the universe that has the much bigger picture of how all this can happen can bring it to you in the right way, at the right time, with the right people, the right opportunities, all of that type of thing. Where if we get so tunnel visioned into something that we want, that we fail to see the other options on the sides of the roads that we're going down. So holding it lightly. And then gate 30 is that emotional intensity. It's longing, it's craving experience, right? The experiences. So now we have the mind, Mercury, in the gate of grace. We have Venus in the heart in the gate of grace. And we have our action principles, the dynamic motion of Mars, also in the solar plexus in the gate of passion. All three inner planets activating the solar plexus. So emotional energy really is uppermost. And this is emotionally charged energy. And it's not necessarily chaotic, but it is charged up, right? You may notice that heightened sensitivity to the world around you, to the atmosphere, right? The atmosphere. You may notice, as I did yesterday, that some things that start out one way end up blowing up out of proportion to what's happened. Um, you noticed it yesterday in the outer world. The Mexican government or the police or somebody shot and killed a drug lord or a kingpin, whatever. I'm not even sure what the terminology is. And then the reaction of the drug cartels was to basically try to burn the town of was it Puerto Vallarta? No, it was another town. Burn it to the ground, right? Crazy, right? Overreactive. And that is a symbolic issue that we're all contending with. Maybe not on that level, right? The outer world just shows us the mirror of the inner world and what it is that we have to move through. We are moving through our own um, overblown reactionary energy to the relationships that we're in, perhaps, or to the way that our mind is working, or to the steps that we take action oriented wise. Now, this is happening as we stand in the shadow this week of the Virgo lunar eclipse, and that will demand our discernment. So we can't just be emotionally bouncing off the walls everywhere because this eclipse is bearing down on us. and it's already activating, and it's emotion first. This is how it's going to feel anyway. Emotion first, but clarity later. And that can only come through discernment, right? The eclipse will be about discerning. Um, we're going to talk way more about the eclipse coming up on Friday, so I don't want to water, down the eclipse, but just know we're in the midst of that as well. And as that comes closer to us, we are evaluating our emotional health. Maybe we are checking our emotional reactions and discerning ultimately what our choices are as we move forward. Now, I also wanted to note that the Human Design Week is changing. Tomorrow morning, the sun will be in the gate 37, which is also on, you guessed it, the emotional solar plexus. And the gate 37 is called the gate of peace. And the earth in this particular relationship will be in the gate 40 on the will center. That's called the gate of restoration. Now, gate 37 is about peace, but it's also about community and agreements that we hold as a community, the contracts perhaps that we hold as a community. It's emotional bonding between people, right? In some ways, this whole channel, the 4037, was the channel of marriage, where marriage by and far, in the original days was an agreement, right? It bonded tribes perhaps together, right? The king's daughter marries another king's son, and these two kingdoms become joined together, right? So it could be a strategic kind of contract. Now, this energy is also getting old and worn out. And I say that because this has made up the energy of the last 400 years at the very minimum, right? That we have worked through as humans, right? Organizing civilizations, bureaucracies, governments, and the support systems and institutions that we've built. And yet, this energy is shifting. This is part of the mutation, the 2027 solar plexus mutation that is occurring, will be occurring next year in January, right? As it really comes into play. And it will change up the way that we emotionally bond. And I think this prelude that we're seeing with all this emotional energy right now is about how is it that we are going to be able to manage that mutation in a way that brings us emotional intelligence instead of our falling apart at the seams and emotionally blowing up at everything. It also restores fairness in relationships. And, or at least that is the hope, right? That this is what will be occurring. In the shadow of the gate 37, it's weakness, right? So like two communities separated with by different interests in these older times were brought together and made stronger by the bonding of two of the participants in their families in a marriage, right? A contract that came together. In the gift, it's equality. And in the Siddhi, it becomes tenderness. So you can see these are kind of themes that are bigger than perhaps just in our personal lives, although it is also something that is impacting us personally. Now, the gate 40, on the other hand, which is on the will center or the center of the heart center, ego center is sometimes also called, um, is about work, is about service. It's about boundaries, and it's about the rest after the effort that we put forth. In quantum human design, we call this gate the gate of restoration, because in its shadow, this gate is exhaustion. This is a center in your human design that burns out very easily. And its gift is resolve. And in its highest expression, the Siddhi is divine will. So this is an energy that is all about using your energy, but without forcing, right? This is using the momentum that you have and recognizing when it comes to a rest. Because most often we don't recognize the rest. We recognize, oh my God, I've got to get this project done. And I keep going and I keep going and I keep going. And eventually that is burnout energy, right? About I think it's about 80% of the world has this particular center open, meaning in your human design chart, it would be white. And this is a place where we are always competing, where we feel the need to be in approval, where we feel the need to force things, to keep going and going and going, even though this energy pulses on and then pulses off, pulses on and then pulses off. But we keep pushing ourselves even through the pulse that says rest. So we're really learning here about the need for rest, the need to renew our energies before we take off on the next leg of the journey. And this is where this gets really, 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 really interesting, because the nodes right now are also in these very two same gates. The north node in the gate 37, the gate of community and agreements, and the south node transiting through the gate 40, the one on the will center here that tends to make us do more and try to be more productive. So this week's Sun-Earth alignment is really mirroring the whole evolutionary axis of the nodes, which of course are vitally engaged in the eclipse patterns, right? They're all related here. So we're collectively learning to move from overwork toward equal partnership, right? Where we're sharing the load, from exhaustion, from going, doing, toward negotiated peace or through negotiated rest periods. And from the I'll just handle this myself toward sharing responsibility, right? Recognizing teamwork, recognizing the value of the group and of the sharing of all the work. And so this energy just isn't like random. This isn't just like randomly we have this happening. It means that there's emotional intensity this week. And it's not just personal, though. It's evolutionary, right? The solar plexus being so activated is not a mistake. It is not, it's kind of absolutely right in keeping with our evolution as human souls on the planet. And what's being activated in the solar plexus is grace, is passion, is peace, and community, and realigning our agreements that help us restore balance and harmony and our energy quotient, right? So this is not a human design week to suppress your emotions. This is a week to really understand your emotional energy and how it is that emotions, the energy of emotions, play out in your life. It's also a week to refine your emotions, to really understand, well, what am I feeling, right? Is this just a mood, or is this something that is much more instructive in terms of what I need to do directionally? It's a week to ask, are my agreements fair? Have I entered into these agreements and they're lopsided and I need to course correct? Where am I overgiving? Where am I needing some rest, some peace before I can take the next steps, right? Because nobody said this life is not a race, right? It seems like it sometimes, right? That the whole outer world focus on productivity can push us to do things that, go beyond our scope of energy at any given time. And now we have Mercury retrograde, Venus, Mars, all in the solar plexus, the nodes. That says that we may get a chance this week, this next couple of weeks, to renegotiate how we are in our lives, how we utilize our energy, the agreements that we have, the contracts that we have. And I just want to remind you that sometimes the agreements aren't necessarily contracts. They're just things that we've decided. Maybe we didn't even consciously decide. We just sort of gave up, that said, okay, I'm agreeing to this because I keep letting it happen. I keep moving along that same path without really consciously being aware of the agreement. If so, it's time to renegotiate that, right? To change up that agreement. All right. So let's zoom out for a moment. Let's, do the big picture thing here. The week isn't random. This is emotionally orchestrated to bring us into more emotional coherence or emotional intelligence. Mercury retrogrades in Pisces beginning February 25th in the gate 22 Grace. Venus joins him there on Friday. Mars starts to is stirring it up now, stirring up our passions in the gate 30. And he is coming into a square with Uranus, the planet of awakening, the planet of liberation. So passion and liberation, or passion and desire and awakening, are in the challenges that we're having, for the end of this week. The planet Uranus is electrifying, if you will, our authenticity, sitting in the gate 8, the gate of contribution. So we have passion equals contribution. And the square says that we need to realign ourselves with that equality statement, that our passion equals action, right? The actions that we're taking or the contribution that we're making. It has to be equal, right? The sun illuminates us, the gate of peace, or the gate of family and community. The earth grounds us in the gate of restoration, where we need to take the breaks, right, as they show in our lives. And the nodes, the north and the south node, mirror that same evolutionary axis that the sun and earth do for this particular week. So really, as I looked ahead at the weekend, I thought it was going to be a mild-mannered kind of week. Surprise, it really isn't. But it's not happening so much in, breathless sort of ways. It's happening in very emotional ways because the solar plexus is activated here. And we're being asked to refine how we feel. How do I feel? How we speak, how we show up in our relationships, and also how to contribute without burning out, right? Without burning that candle at both ends, which leads to such burnout, right? That it could be physical, it could be mental and emotional, and find us, lacking the energy to take on the opportunities that inevitably show up, right? When we don't have the energy to take it on. Mars coming into the square with Uranus may tempt you to react. And that will be a big test, I think, as we get to the end of the week. We might want to break something or to declare independence in some way. And when I say break, I mean take a break or break away from or liberate from. Mercury retrograde, when he comes into this conjunction with Venus, whispers kind of a slow down energy and feel it first. Feel it. Feel your way into it. The gate 37 to the gate 40, that connection to community and peace, asks if your agreements are fair, or are you always getting the short end of the stick? Are you exhausted from carrying more than your share of the load? And are you negotiating peace, or are you performing it? Are we just doing something perfunctorily or because it makes good headlines? Or are we really engaging in the peaceful process? And then that Virgo lunar eclipse that's approaching is grounding, in a way, of this new emotional field of energy, of the potential for expressing emotional energy appropriately, correctly. And Virgo refines, right? It's about discernment. And it reveals to us what's not sustainable. So where Virgo is in your own astrology chart, this is where that eclipse will lay. If you attended the Astrology of 2026 webinar, or even if you purchased it or signed up for it, you got your chart from me with it outlined for you where that eclipse was by house. You also got the house designations, so you know if this is going to happen in your first house, your third house, your 10th house, where's it going on? So it completes this circuit of this energy right now that is going through our emotional energy, that is helping us to ground in emotional energy to use it correctly and appropriately. It is also helping us let go of victim, martyr, savior kinds of energies, right? Victim energies. It clarifies where service has become self-sacrifice. It restores our well-being through discerning what is right for us, what is appropriate for us. And remember, Pisces dissolves and Virgo decides. Virgo's ruled by Mercury. So it'll be interesting, a Virgo eclipse with Mercury, its ruler, in retrograde in the opposing sign, right, of Pisces, near the sun during that eclipse. And kind of telling us that there's something new in the offing if we only can corral and understand how to use our emotional energy, right? And that's why this is all about emotional recalibration, really helping us to understand how we're utilizing our emotional energy. And this is growth in our emotional intelligence then. I mean, literally, I think if we look in the big picture of why it is we're on earth in this moment, it's all about this, right? Because we're about to birth a new 400-year cycle where emotional intelligence is the hallmark of it, right? Rather than the administrative things that we've built up to support and cultivate culture and society. It is now switching to, well, now how do we interact and interdependence themes, and how do we interact emotionally in our relationships, right? That's what this next 400 years will be all about. Too bad I won't be here for 400 years, but it would be interesting to look back later and say, oh, this is where we made the choice to become emotionally intelligent. This is learning how to handle intensity, the intensity of feelings and emotions and moods without losing grace, without like dumping that emotional tirade on somebody. And if you allow the feelings to surface during this time period, and without immediate reaction to those feelings, the eclipse then becomes an illumination time for you instead of a rupturing time for you. And if it is a rupturing time for you, then what you're still learning, right? You're still learning about emotional energy. And peace, by the way, is not passive. That's another lesson that we learn here. Restoration is not a weakness, right? Taking time for rest and relaxation and to restore your energy is not a weakness. That is not your human failing. It is a human need to rest, to gather your energies, and then move forward again. Grace then is also strength under pressure. And that feels like the higher road that we're traveling this week, the rest of this month, and well, into next month, right? Into March. And as you move, then, as we all move through this upcoming week, um, here are a couple of things to reflect on for your own life. Where are you reacting from exhaustion in your life rather than truth? Where are you trying to keep up with the Joneses, if you will, to keep going, to keep doing, even if it's sacrificing your own energy? Where are you doing that? And where have you been overgiving without feeling like it's being met in a reciprocal sort of way? And you might start looking at the agreements that you have in your life. What agreement in my life needs renegotiation, right? And remember, it's not necessarily the written agreements, right? It's the maybe unspoken agreements that we live from, right? And what would grace look like in the hardest conversations that you might have to have over the next couple of weeks? What would it look like to be in grace? And perhaps most importantly, is it sustainable? Can you sustain a relationship being in grace, saying, with emotional intelligence what you're feeling rather than spewing and dumping on someone else? So, if something feels emotionally charged for you over these next few weeks, pause before you say or do or make any decisions, right? Time is your ally, time is your friend during these next couple of weeks. Let the wave of that emotion move over you, right? Let it crest and wane. Let the fog lift because of Neptune being where Mercury's retrograde is encompassing, where Venus is, where Mars is moving. This is like this time where fog is very prevalent. So let the fog lift and let discernment follow emotion. Actually, I think let discernment precede emotion, right? Before you act on the emotion, let discernment be there. Because the week, the time that we're in, isn't about being right. I there's all of this Aries energy that is not yet completely built, right? By the time we get to April, as I told everybody on Saturday during the webinar, um, might doesn't make right necessarily, but that's an energy that we're dealing with as we move forward. He who has the biggest guns, who has the most weapons, who can, do the most damage, does not necessarily make them right. And remember, we're supposed to be aiming at peace, right? Peace. How do we bring peace? Well, we bring peace by first managing our own emotions, our own emotional reactions, becoming responsive versus reactionary, and refining what it is that we're feeling, remembering that we are not those feelings. We are feeling them, but we are not them. It's not, I am angry. I am feeling anger. I am feeling upset, but I am not that, right? Don't carry that like some kind of identity that you have, because it's a mood. It's a feeling, and those shift and they morph. And we can do a lot of damage if we react to that time when we're feeling anger or frustration or upset, right? And that's how we grow, right, as human beings. This is how we are growing and evolving over time. All right. All right, let's look at who else is here with us and any questions people might have. Christine Buckingham natally has Sun in Pisces in the gate 22. You are aiming at a birthday, apparently, Christine. Joan Durkee, good morning to you. Christine says 22.2 on the mind side. I love it when the numbers double up like that, or triple in this case, 22.2. Asa, good morning to you. Christine, I missed the seminar. Internet was out. We'll replay. This is so funny, you guys. So yesterday, actually after the broadcast on Saturday, I tried to produce the video so that it could be sent out to everybody. But it told me it was going to take, like 9 hours. And it was, 2:00 in the afternoon. I was not going to stay up till 11 o'clock at night to make sure it rendered correctly. So I started Sunday morning. And literally it took all day for that movie or that video to render into something that I can actually send out. So you guys did receive already your charts. You did receive the notification that I'll send out that recording along with the slides and an offer for you to have a personal reading if that is something that you would like to do. And I will package it up so those of you who weren't able to attend can purchase it and download it and still be able to have it. So that'll be coming in the next day as I get that all put together. Okay, Jackie, JLo 22.2 in my culture. That is a Gene Keys term, and that's an important position to have that at, to recognize your moods and how they are shifting and how they have been and are impacting your life and the things that you say and the way that you say it and when you say it and who you say it to. Just flow with it all. I think that's the best way. Crystal Goldschmidt, nice to have you with us this morning. She has the sun in Capricorn, moon in Virgo, and Sagittarius rising. So the eclipse that's upcoming is going to be at in the 13th degree of Virgo. It's like 12.54, so it's really 13th degree. So find that degree, find out what degree your moon is at, and if the eclipse is going to be happening on top of your moon, that is going to be very emotionally active for you as we go into next week. So, and even now, right, because the eclipses don't happen, they do happen in a moment, but they build up over time and then they release over time. So pay attention to your emotions, Crystal, because that's important for you right now. I didn't get that second email, just the first one. I sent it out to you personally Saturday morning, Christine, so maybe check again because your chart will be attached to that email. And I think I sent it, I only have one email address for you, so maybe check your spam folder. I don't know, it should be there. And I will be sending out the video links later on today. All right, everybody, that is it for me this morning. Thank you all so much for joining me. I will be back again I'm actually back again on Wednesday because we are in the last week of the month. And that means Tam and I will be doing the March Astro Inklings on Wednesday morning, same time, same place, where we look ahead and kind of talk about the energies for March. But then I will also be here on Friday. All right, you guys, thanks so much. Take care. Have a great day. Bye for now.